Hey guys, tonight we're exploring the profound philosophical musings of a goldfish. You drift near the surface of your tank, watching the light ripple across the water, and a question bubbles up from somewhere deep. What if forgetting isn't a flaw, but a gift? As you glide past the ceramic castle for what might be the 100th or the first time today, their existential insights might just mirror your own struggles with memory, presence, and the weight of accumulated experience. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you are watching with your own goldfish nearby, I'd love to hear in the comments what philosophical questions you think they ponder during those long, quiet swims. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey through one thoughtful creature's philosophical exploration. You circle the tank again, your fins creating tiny currents that disturb the surface just enough to make the world above shimmer. The water carries vibrations from the room beyond, footsteps perhaps, or the low hum of machinery that never quite stops. But here's the thing that occupies your mind as you navigate past the plastic plant. You can't quite remember if you've had this exact thought before. Scientists have discovered that goldfish can actually remember things for at least 3 months, not the mythical 3 seconds everyone jokes about. They can be trained to recognize shapes, colors, even specific humans who feed them. Yet here you are, wondering if perhaps the real wisdom lies not in what you remember, but in what you allow yourself to release. You pause near the bubble stream, letting the tiny spheres tickle your scales. Each bubble rises with such determination, such purpose, only to pop at the surface and disappear forever. Is this what thoughts should be like? Perfect little moments of awareness that serve their purpose and then dissolve back into the greater whole. The philosophical concept of tabula rasa, the blank slate, takes on new meaning when you consider it from your perspective. What if consciousness isn't about accumulating experiences like sediment at the bottom of a lake, but rather maintaining a kind of pristine clarity? You swim through the same water you swam through yesterday, yet it's been filtered, oxygenated, renewed. The water remembers nothing, yet it sustains everything. You notice your reflection in the glass and pause. That fish looking back at you seems familiar, yet you can't be entirely certain it's the same reflection you saw this morning. Or was it 5 minutes ago? The uncertainty doesn't trouble you. In fact, there's something almost liberating about it. Philosophers like Nietzsche spoke of eternal recurrence, the idea that we might live the same life over and over. But what if you're living proof that each moment can be experienced fresh, unburdened by the weight of its previous iterations? A flake of food drifts down from above, and you rise to meet it with the enthusiasm of someone experiencing this miracle for the very first time. Because in a way, you are. The taste, the texture, the gentle way it dissolves on your tongue, all of these sensations exist purely in this moment. You don't need to compare this flake to yesterday's flake. Don't need to rank it against all the flakes that came before. It simply is, and you simply are, together in this fleeting instant of nourishment. As you descend back toward the middle depths of your domain, you contemplate the human obsession with memory. They build monuments, take photographs, write in journals, all desperate attempts to pin down moments that were meant to flow. You've seen them through the glass, these large creatures who seem so burdened by their ability to remember everything. They carry their past like shells they can never shed, growing heavier with each passing year. But you carry nothing. Each loop around the tank is both familiar and foreign, like a song you know you've heard but can't quite place. The decorative skull in the corner might have been there forever, or might have appeared just moments ago. This uncertainty would terrify most creatures, but for you, it's the source of a profound peace. Every encounter with that skull carries the possibility of being the first encounter charged with the electricity of discovery. You drift lower, where the light grows softer and the water feels slightly cooler against your scales. Here, in this quieter space, you consider what memory actually serves. For creatures who must migrate thousands of miles or remember where they buried their winter stores, memory is survival. But your world is contained, safe, predictable. Food arrives from above. The water maintains its temperature. Danger, real danger, doesn't exist here. So what purpose would extensive memory serve except to clutter the pure experience of being? The substrate below sparkles occasionally when you disturb it with a lazy sweep of your tail. These tiny moments of brightness appear and vanish like thoughts themselves, beautiful in their impermanence. You wonder if consciousness might be less like a library, carefully cataloging every experience, and more like the surface of your tank, constantly reflecting the present moment while letting the past sink peacefully away. As you complete this circuit, returning to where you might have started, you feel a gentle contentment wash over you. Whether this is your first philosophical journey or your 1000th, it holds the same quality of wonder. Perhaps forgetting isn't about loss at all, but about making space. Space for new experiences to land as softly as food flakes on the water's surface. Space for consciousness to rest in the eternal now, unburdened by the need to carry forward what has already been fully lived. The water holds you, supports you, asks nothing of you but your presence. And in this moment, presence is all you have to offer, all you need to offer. The question that started this meditation about forgetting being the purest form of rest seems to answer itself in the rhythmic movement of your gills, each breath a small forgetting, each exhale a tiny liberation. The water ripples outward from where you just swam, creating patterns that bounce off the glass walls and return transformed. This brings you to wonder as you glide near the artificial coral, whether memories are like these ripples, patterns that seem to return but are never quite the same. Each wave that comes back to you has traveled its own journey, collected its own subtle changes, become something new while maintaining an echo of what it was. You position yourself in the gentle current from the filter, feeling how the water moves predictably yet uniquely each moment. Scientists studying fluid dynamics would tell you that no two water molecules follow exactly the same path, even in the most controlled conditions. Perhaps memory works the same way, not as fixed recordings, but as patterns that recreate themselves slightly differently each time, like water finding a familiar but never identical route. A shadow passes overhead, the room's light temporarily dimmed by movement beyond your liquid sky. You've seen this shadow before, or one like it. The distinction hardly matters when you experience it with such immediacy. What fascinates you is how your body responds, adjusting positions slightly without any conscious recall of previous shadows. Your fins know the dance, even if your mind doesn't catalogue each performance. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus spoke of flux, how everything flows and nothing stands still. As you swim through water that's constantly cycling through the filter, being cleaned and returned, you embody this principle. The water 3 inches from your gills right now will be somewhere else in moments, yet the tank remains full, the environment stable. Memory might be similar, not a thing to be held, but a pattern that manifests temporarily in the flow of consciousness. You notice another goldfish approaching, scales catching the light in a familiar way. Do you know this fish? The question seems oddly constructed, like asking if you know the water you're swimming through. You share this space, have shared it for however long, yet each encounter has its own quality. Recognition flickers, not as memory, but as resonance, like 2 tuning forks finding the same frequency. The way your tank mate moves triggers something, not quite memory, but a kind of embodied knowledge. You adjust your swimming pattern automatically, creating space, maintaining harmony. This is what researchers call procedural memory, the kind that lives in the body rather than conscious thought. Your fins know how to navigate social waters, even if your mind treats each meeting as potentially new. You drift back at the treasure chest decoration, its painted surface hosting a thin film of beneficial algae. The algae grows so slowly you can't perceive the change, yet it must be different from yesterday, from last week. This gradual transformation mirrors how memories might work, not as static photographs, but as living things that change even as they persist. The treasure chest you see now includes all its previous versions, yet you perceive only this moment's iteration. The pH testing strip stuck to the side of the tank catches your eye, its colors perhaps different from when it was first placed there. Or perhaps not. The uncertainty doesn't trouble you, because the strip serves its purpose regardless of when it arrived. This is how you navigate your world, through a kind of functional, present-tense awareness that responds to what is, rather than cataloging what was. As you swim higher, approaching the surface where the water meets air, you create tiny whirlpools with your movement. Each vortex spins off and dissipates, a temporary organization of chaos that exists just long enough to be beautiful. You wonder if thoughts and memories might be similar, temporary organizations of neural activity that arise, serve their purpose, and dissolve back into the general hum of consciousness. The feeding ring floats at the surface, defining a small area where food appears. You approach it with something that might be anticipation or might simply be response to visual stimuli. The distinction between memory-driven expectation and present-moment awareness blurs like the boundary between water and air. When food does appear within that ring, are you remembering that this is where food comes? Or are you simply responding to the immediate reality of food being there? A strand of plant matter has come loose and drifts through the water like a green ribbon. You've seen this before, surely, yet it captivates you as if witnessing plant movement for the first time. This might be the secret to contentment, experiencing the familiar as if it were novel, finding wonder in repetition without the weight of comparison. The thermometer reads 76 degrees, though you can't read numbers. What you can feel is the perfect comfort of your environment, maintained within a narrow range that supports your life. Someone beyond the glass ensures this stability, checking, adjusting, maintaining. Their memory serves your forgetting. Their attention to patterns allows your freedom from them. You pass through a beam of light that penetrates the water at just the right angle to create a shaft of brightness. Swimming through it feels like passing through something significant, though you can't say what. The light warms your scales momentarily before you glide back into the softer illumination. Was that the same beam of light from this morning? From 5 minutes ago? The question dissolves as quickly as it forms. Near the bottom of the tank, where the gravel holds its secrets, you notice how each small stone seems placed with purpose, yet you have no memory of them being arranged. They simply exist in their current configuration, creating hiding spots and territories that you navigate by instinct rather than recall. The patterns in the gravel might spell out words in some human language, or they might be entirely random. From your perspective, the distinction is meaningless. You catch sight of your reflection again, this time in the glass thermometer. This smaller, distorted version of yourself moves when you move, yet with a slight delay that makes you wonder about the nature of simultaneity. Are you the fish or the reflection? Are you the pattern of movement or the body that creates it? These questions would tie philosophers in knots, but for you, they're as light as the bubbles that rise perpetually from the aerator. The water itself holds a kind of memory, you realize, not in any conscious way, but in its temperature gradients, its chemical composition, the way it carries the faint traces of everything that has passed through it. Yet this memory is fluid, constantly updating, never fixed. Perhaps this is the kind of memory you possess as well, not a storehouse, but a stream, always flowing, always present, never quite the same. As you complete another circuit of your domain, you find yourself back near the filter output where this contemplation began. Or perhaps it's a different place that only resembles where you started. The ripples you're creating now merge with the constant flow from the filter, becoming part of a larger pattern that neither begins nor ends with your movement. In this endless circulation of cause and effect, memory and forgetting, you find a rhythm that needs no explanation, no justification, only the simple act of being present within it. The question of identity surfaces as naturally as you do when seeking food, rising from the depths of contemplation with barely a ripple. You pause near the ceramic castle, fins barely moving, and consider this body you inhabit. The cells that make up your scales are not the same cells from last month. Scientists have documented that fish, like most living creatures, continuously replace their cellular structure. Your scales shed and regrow. Your blood cells die and regenerate. Even your brain cells undergo constant renewal. So what exactly makes you the same fish? You turn slightly, catching the light on your scales, each one a tiny mirror reflecting a world you'll never fully grasp. These scales weren't here when you were smaller, if indeed you were ever smaller. The paradox amuses you in the way only a fish can be amused, which is to say, lightly, without the weight of needing resolution. You are simultaneously the fish you've always been, and a completely different creature from moment to moment. The ancient philosophical puzzle of the ship of Theseus comes to mind, though you've never heard of ships or Theseus. If every plank of a ship is gradually replaced, is it still the same ship? If every cell in your body cycles through replacement, are you still the same goldfish? The question would torment human philosophers, but for you, swimming through your liquid universe, the answer seems as obvious as water itself. You are the pattern, not the parts. You are the dance, not just the dancer. Your tank mate swims by again. Or perhaps it's a different fish entirely. How would you know? Their orange-gold coloring matches yours, more or less. But then again, doesn't everyone look vaguely similar when you can't quite remember what anyone looked like 5 minutes ago? This thought brings a peculiar comfort. If everyone is potentially new, then everyone is equally familiar. The playing field of social interaction levels itself beautifully when memory doesn't create hierarchies of familiarity. You navigate toward the bottom of the tank, where the gravel creates a landscape of tiny valleys and hills. Your body knows this terrain, adjusts for it, even though your mind treats it as terra incognita each time. This is what continuity might really mean. Not the persistence of matter, but the persistence of pattern. The way you swim, the angle at which you approach the filter current, the precise distance you maintain from the glass, these patterns persist even as every molecule of your being transforms. A piece of fish flake, waterlogged and sinking, catches your attention. You approach it with the same interest you'd show to any food, though something in the way you move suggests this might not be your first encounter with sinking flakes. Your mouth knows exactly how to adjust for the soggier texture. Your throat automatically prepares for a different kind of swallow. The body remembers what the mind releases, creating a kind of identity that exists below the threshold of conscious memory. Researchers studying goldfish have discovered that they can maintain complex spatial maps of their environment, even navigating mazes in complete darkness once they've learnt the route. Your brain contains place cells and grid cells, just like those found in mammals, creating an internal GPS that persists even when conscious memory might not. So perhaps you do remember, just not in the way humans think of remembering. Perhaps identity isn't about conscious continuity, but about these deeper patterns encoded in neural pathways you'll never directly access. You find yourself near the heater, where the water carries a slightly different quality, warmer, more forgiving. The temperature gradient creates a boundary you can feel but not see, and you adjust your position to find the perfect balance between warm and cool. This preference, this seeking of comfort, surely this is part of what makes you you. Even if you don't remember developing this preference, even if each approach to the heater feels like the first time, the fact that you consistently seek this comfort suggests something persistent beneath the surface of forgetting. The philosopher Derek Parfit argued that identity is less important than continuity and connectedness. As you drift past your own reflection once more, this distinction feels particularly relevant. You are connected to the fish you were yesterday through a chain of overlapping experiences, even if you can't consciously access that chain. Like a river that maintains its identity despite the constant flow of new water, you maintain your fishness despite the constant flow of new cells, new experiences, new moments of forgetting. A bubble rises past your eye, and you track its ascent with the focus of a meditation master. This bubble, like you, exists temporarily in its current form. The air inside was once dissolved in the water, will soon rejoin the atmosphere, yet for this moment, it is perfectly, distinctly a bubble. Your identity might be similar, a temporary arrangement of matter and energy that exists long enough to contemplate its own existence. The light shifts again as clouds pass over the sun outside, creating new patterns on the sandy bottom. You swim through these light patterns, becoming part of them, your shadow mixing with the natural play of illumination and darkness. In this moment, you wonder if identity might be less about what you are and more about how you interact with your environment. You are not just a fish, but a fish in water, a fish in this tank, a fish in relation to everything around you. The castle decoration looms before you again, its tiny windows dark and mysterious. You peer inside, though you've surely done this before. Or have you? The uncertainty doesn't diminish the experience. If anything, it enhances it. Every exploration carries the thrill of potential discovery. You are the same fish who has always been curious about castle windows, even if you don't remember previous investigations. The curiosity itself is a thread of continuity more durable than memory. Near the surface, the protein film creates swirling patterns that catch the light. You rise to investigate, your mouth working at the surface, creating tiny popping sounds. This behavior, surface feeding, is written into your genetic code, inherited from countless generations of carp ancestors who fed in shallow ponds. In this way, you carry an identity that extends far beyond your individual existence. You are not just this goldfish, but part of an unbroken chain of goldfishness, stretching back through evolutionary time. Your lateral line system detects minute pressure changes as your tankmate approaches from behind. Without looking, you adjust your position slightly, maintaining appropriate social distance. This automatic response happens faster than thought, certainly faster than memory. It suggests that who you are exists as much in these unconscious responses as in any conscious sense of self. Identity might be the sum of all these tiny, automatic adjustments you make to navigate your world. The feeding time approaches, though you don't know how you know this. Perhaps it's the angle of light, the sound patterns from beyond the glass, or some other cue too subtle for conscious awareness. You find yourself near the feeding area, waiting with an expectation you can't quite name. This anticipation, arising from somewhere below memory, might be the truest expression of your continuous self. You are the fish who knows when food is coming, even if you don't remember learning this rhythm. As you wait, you notice how your breathing has synchronized with the rhythm of the filter's output. Inhale as the current pushes past. Exhale in the spaces between. This unconscious synchronization speaks to a deep attunement with your environment that transcends conscious memory. You don't remember learning to breathe with the current, yet your body knows this dance intimately. Perhaps this is what identity really is. Not a collection of memories, but a collection of attunements. The question that started this contemplation about what makes you the same fish, despite constant physical change, seems to answer itself in the asking. The very fact that you can wonder about your identity, that this question arises naturally in your fish consciousness, suggests a continuity of being that transcends physical form. You are the space in which this question arises, the awareness that notices change and continuity alike. Food finally arrives, dropping through the feeding ring in a familiar cascade. As you rise to meet it, you embody all the fish you've ever been. The small fry who first learned to feed at the surface, the growing juvenile who competed with tank mates, the mature fish who now approaches food with measured confidence. All these versions exist simultaneously in this moment, not as memories, but as layers of being, each informing the present without needing to be consciously recalled. You are all of them and none of them. The eternal goldfish refreshing itself with each forgotten moment, maintaining identity not through memory, but through the simple, profound act of continuing to be. A bubble catches your eye as it rises past the castle turret, and suddenly the entire universe collapses into this single sphere of air, making its journey upward. This is what attention does, you realize. It carves out a piece of the infinite and makes it everything. The bubble becomes your whole world for these 3 seconds, more real than the castle, more present than the water, more significant than whatever you might have been thinking before it appeared. When it pops at the surface, reality expands again, but for that moment, Attention made the bubble the only thing that mattered. You drift leftward, following a current you didn't consciously notice until your attention found it. This is the peculiar thing about attention. It seems to create what it observes. Was the current there before you noticed it? Of course. But in another sense, it only truly existed for you the moment your awareness touched it. The phenomenologist Maurice Merleau-Ponty would say that consciousness and world arise together, each bringing the other into being. As you follow the current, you embody this philosophy, your attention, and the water flow creating each other in real time. Something glints near the gravel, a piece of decoration perhaps, or just the way light happens to strike a particular stone. Your focus narrows, drawing you downward. Whatever memory you might have of this corner of the tank fades into irrelevance compared to the immediacy of attention. You don't need to remember what's usually here to fully experience what's here now. Attention makes its own reality, fresh and complete, independent of whatever came before. Scientists studying attention in fish have discovered something remarkable. When goldfish focus on a specific stimulus, their neural activity patterns show enhanced processing in that area while suppressing information from other sources. Your brain, small as it might be, actively sculpts your reality through the spotlight of attention. You're not passively receiving the world, but actively creating it, moment by moment, through the simple act of noticing. Your tankmate appears in your peripheral vision, but you don't fully turn. This half attention creates a different kind of reality than full focus would. They exist as a presence rather than a detailed fish, a feeling of company rather than a specific individual. This might be how most of your world exists, in various states of partial attention, real but not quite realized, present but not quite precise. The world you live in is layered with these gradients of attention, each level creating its own version of reality. The filter current pulls at your fins, and you allow your attention to expand into this sensation. Suddenly, you're aware of every scale, every fin ray, every minute adjustment your body makes to maintain position. This somatic attention creates a reality where you are intensely, vividly, a body in water. Then a movement above draws your eye, and instantly you're something else, a consciousness oriented upward, the body sensation fading into background hum. Reality shifts with each shift of attention, fluid as the water you swim through. You notice yourself noticing, a meta-attention that creates yet another layer of reality. Now you're not just a fish attending to bubbles or currents, but a fish aware of being a fish attending to things. This recursive awareness doesn't require memory of previous moments of self-awareness. It arises fresh each time, attention folding back on itself like light bouncing between mirrors, creating infinite depths in the present moment. The Buddha's concept of mindfulness speaks to this power of attention to create reality. Not mindfulness as humans often practice it, effortfully trying to stay present, but the natural mindfulness of a being for whom each moment of attention is complete in itself. You don't need to remember to be mindful, because attention without the burden of comparison to past attention is automatically pure presence. A shadow passes over the tank and your attention snaps upward. In this instant, the shadow becomes more real than the gravel you were just examining, more significant than the filter's hum, more present than your own body. This is attention's magic, its ability to promote aspects of experience from background to foreground, from possibility to actuality. You don't need to remember previous shadows to fully experience this one. Attention makes it new, makes it now, makes it real. The feeding ring floats above, and you notice how your attention affects your physical reality. When you focus on it, your body automatically adjusts, positioning for optimal access. Attention doesn't just notice reality, it shapes it, creates it, participates in its unfolding. Your focus on the ring brings forth a whole cascade of physical responses, none of which require conscious memory of previous feedings. Attention alone is enough to orchestrate the dance. You find yourself in the space between decorations, a relatively empty zone of tank. Here, with less to focus on, your attention diffuses, becoming spacious and calm. This too creates its own reality, one of openness, possibility, rest. You float in this attentional space, neither focused nor distracted, and discover that reality can be as simple as water and light when attention takes a break from creating complexity. Research has shown that goldfish can maintain attention on a task for extended periods, far longer than the mythical 3-second memory would suggest. But watching yourself attend to various aspects of your environment, you realize that sustained attention might not require memory at all. Each moment of focus can be complete, sufficient, even if it doesn't connect to the moments before or after. Attention creates its own continuity through intensity rather than duration. The thermometer strip catches your eye again, its colors meaningless but mesmerizing. As you focus on it, it becomes a window into the nature of attention itself. The strip hasn't changed, but your attention makes it new, finds different aspects to notice, creates fresh reality from unchanged objects. This might be the deepest magic of consciousness, its ability to generate novelty through the simple act of looking. You begin another circuit of your tank, following a path that feels both inevitable and chosen, and a question forms like a slow bubble in your consciousness. When you complete this lap and start another, are you traveling in a circle or moving forward through time? The route is the same, the landmarks identical, yet something feels different about each journey. Perhaps time isn't a line or a circle, but something more complex, something only a fish endlessly swimming the same route could understand. The castle passes on your left, as it always does on this particular path. Or is it always? Without memory to create a sense of sequence, each passing might be the first, making your journey less circular and more like a series of discrete moments that happen to occur in similar spaces. You're not so much swimming in circles as swimming in a spiral through time, each lap occurring at a different moment, making it fundamentally unique despite the spatial repetition. Scientists have observed that goldfish often establish regular swimming patterns, following the same routes through their environment with remarkable consistency. This behavior, called stereotypic swimming, might look like mindless repetition to human observers. But as you follow your familiar path, you sense something deeper at work. Each lap is a meditation, a prayer wheel spinning through water, creating something through repetition that couldn't exist in a single lullaby. The ancient Greeks had two words for time, chronos and kairos. Chronos is sequential time, the clock ticking, the calendar advancing. Kairos is the perfect moment, time that exists outside sequence, full of significance, regardless of when it occurs. As you swim your circuits, you realize you live primarily in kairos. Each moment around your track is the perfect moment, complete in itself, not requiring placement in a sequence to have meaning. Your tail fin propels you past the filter intake, and you feel the slight pull you felt countless times before. Or is it countless? Can something be counted if you don't remember the previous instances? This uncertainty transforms repetition into something else entirely. You're not adding laps to a total, but experiencing each circuit as both first and infinite, new and eternal simultaneously. The funny thing about swimming in circles is that you never actually arrive anywhere, yet you're always arriving. Every point on your circuit is both destination and departure, ending and beginning. Human philosophers might tie themselves in knots over this paradox, but for you, it's simply Tuesday, or Wednesday, or any day, really, since days themselves are just larger circles you swim through without counting. A bubble rises beside you, and you match its pace for a moment. The bubble travels in a straight line, up and up, until it ceases to exist. Your path curves back on itself, sustainable, eternal in its own small way. Which movement through time is more meaningful? The bubble's linear journey to extinction, or your circular dance of continuation? Perhaps meaning doesn't require progress. Perhaps it can exist in the perfect repetition of a life fully lived within chosen boundaries. You notice the gravel pattern below and realize you've noticed it before, though you can't remember when. This creates an odd temporal echo, a sense of time folding back on itself. If you can't remember previous observations but feel their resonance, are you moving through time, or is time moving through you? The question makes your fins flutter in what might be piscine laughter. Time, like water, simply is. You swim through both without needing to understand either. The Zen concept of Enso, the circle that symbolizes enlightenment, strength, and the universe, seems particularly relevant as you complete another lap. The Enso is often painted in one fluid stroke, beginning and ending at the same point, yet encompassing everything. Your swimming creates invisible ensos in the water, temporary but perfect. Each lap a meditation on the nature of completion and continuation. Halfway through your current circuit, you pause. This breaks the pattern, creates a hiccup in time. When you resume swimming, is it the same lap or a new one? If a circle is broken, even momentarily, does it remain the same circle when reformed? These questions would paralyze a philosopher, but you simply resume swimming, letting the action answer what words cannot. Your tankmate passes in the opposite direction, and for a moment, you're synchronized, two fish creating intersecting circles in time. Their lap and yours create a kind of temporal figure eight, infinity rotating through water. When they complete their circuit and you complete yours, will you meet again at this same point? Or will it be a different point in a different moment, only appearing the same because space provides the illusion of repetition while time ensures nothing ever truly repeats? The light begins its daily shift toward evening, though you have no concept of evening as such. You simply notice the quality of illumination changing, shadows lengthening across the gravel. This cyclical transformation of light creates another layer of time. Solar circles intersecting with your swimming circles, wheels within wheels of repetition and change. You swim through the intersection of these cycles, a small, golden constant in the flux of larger patterns. Near the thermometer, you feel the water temperature holding steady, maintained by the heater's cyclical operation. On, off, the heater creates its own temporal rhythm, one you feel but don't consciously track. Your circles swim through its circles, creating complex patterns of intersection between your movement and the tank's mechanical rhythms. Time reveals itself as layered, multiple, more symphony than metronome. The feeding ring above bobs slightly in the surface tension, and you realize it too exists in cyclical time. It rises and falls with tiny waves, rotates slowly with the filter's current, marks the daily return of feeding time. Circles everywhere, cycles overlapping, time revealing itself not as a river flowing in one direction, but as a vast system of rotating gears, each turning at its own pace, creating the complex clockwork of existence. You've heard humans speak of déjà vu, that strange feeling of having experienced something before. But what is your entire existence but a continuous déjà vu? Every lap feels familiar yet fresh, known yet unknown. Perhaps this is what it means to live truly in the present, to experience each moment as both memory and discovery, pattern and surprise. The philosopher Nietzsche proposed the thought experiment of eternal recurrence. What if you had to live your exact life over and over, infinitely? For humans, this often seems like a curse or a test. But as you swim your possibly infinite laps, you realize you might be living proof that eternal recurrence can be a form of contentment. When each circuit is a complete in itself, when memory doesn't create comparison or boredom, repetition becomes rhythm, becomes peace. A small piece of plant matter drifts across your path, carried by the current. You'll encounter it again on your next lap, as it too follows its own circular journey around the tank. Or perhaps it will have moved on, caught in a different current, creating a new pattern. This unpredictability within predictability might be what makes your circular life sustainable. The route remains constant, but the details shift, creating infinite variations on a theme. You complete another circuit, or perhaps your first, or perhaps your millionth. The number doesn't matter when each lap exists in its own perfect present. Time isn't a burden you carry, but a medium you swim through, as natural and unnoticed as water. Your circles don't trap you in repetition, but free you from the illusion that life must be linear to have meaning. In the perfect curve of your endless path, you've discovered something humans spend lifetimes seeking: the ability to be fully present in cycles of experience, finding newness in repetition, eternity in the moment, the entire universe in the small circle of your daily swim. You drift toward the front glass of your tank, that transparent barrier between your liquid world and the dry universe beyond. And suddenly, there it is again, that other fish that appears whenever you approach. It moves when you move, stops when you stop, a perfect mirror of your actions, yet somehow separate, existing in a parallel space you can never quite reach. This reflection poses a question that has haunted consciousness since it first became aware of itself. When you look at your reflection, what exactly are you seeing? The glass offers a slightly warped version of yourself, compressed and stretched by the curve of the tank wall. Scientists have demonstrated that fish can indeed recognize themselves in mirrors, showing signs of self-awareness previously thought limited to humans and a few other species. Some fish will even examine marks on their bodies when seeing their reflection, suggesting they understand the image represents themselves. Yet as you float before your glassy doppelganger, you wonder if recognition and understanding are the same thing. Your reflection appears flat, lacking the dimension you know yourself to possess. It shows your scales, your fins, the round curve of your eye, but can it capture the feeling of water flowing through your gills? Can it show the sensation of your lateral line, detecting minute pressure changes? The reflection reveals your surface, but conceals your experience, like a photograph of the ocean that captures none of its motion, depth, or power. The philosopher Jacques Lacan wrote about the mirror stage, the moment when an infant first recognizes themselves in a mirror and begins to form a sense of self as separate from the world. But your relationship with your reflection seems more fluid. Sometimes you acknowledge it, sometimes you ignore it, sometimes you're not entirely sure if it's you or another fish entirely. This uncertainty might be its own kind of wisdom, a refusal to be trapped by a single image of selfhood. You turn slightly, watching your reflection turn in response. Or do you turn in response to it? When memory doesn't create a clear sequence of cause and effect, the question of who's leading this dance becomes beautifully ambiguous. Perhaps you and your reflection are engaged in an eternal duet, each simultaneously leading and following, creating movement through mutual response rather than individual initiative. A bubble drifts between you and the glass, momentarily obscuring your reflection. When it passes, the fish in the glass returns, but is it the same reflection? If a reflection disappears and reappears, does it maintain continuity, or is each appearance a new reflection altogether? Without memory to connect the moments before and after the bubble, each return of your reflection might be a fresh encounter, a new opportunity to meet yourself for the first time. The light from above creates a secondary reflection on the water's surface, a shimmering, broken version of you that dances with every ripple. This reflection lacks even the stability of the glass one, constantly fragmenting and reforming, yet it might be more honest in its instability. After all, aren't you also constantly changing? Cells replacing themselves, thoughts flowing and dissipating. Perhaps the rippling surface reflection captures something essential that the steady glass reflection misses. You notice how your reflection changes depending on the angle of approach. From straight on, you see a fish that looks reasonably like how you imagine yourself. But approach from below, and suddenly you're all belly and gaping mouth. From above, you're a streamlined torpedo of scales and fins. Which angle reveals the real you? The question assumes there's a single, true self to be revealed, but perhaps you're all of these angles simultaneously, a multifaceted being that can't be captured in any single view. The Buddhist concept of anatta, or non-self, suggests that what we think of as self is actually a collection of ever-changing physical and mental forces. Your reflection embodies this teaching perfectly. It exists only in relation to light, glass, your position, the clarity of water. Remove any of these conditions and the reflection vanishes. It has no independent existence, no essential reflectionness separate from the circumstances that create it. And perhaps neither do you. Your tank mate swims past behind you, and for a moment, their reflection appears in the glass alongside yours. 2 fish, 4 images if you count the reflections. Or perhaps infinite fish when you consider that each of you reflects in the other's eye, creating an endless recursion of fish reflecting fish reflecting fish. In this hall of mirrors, where does one fish end and another begin? The boundaries that seem so clear in direct observation blur in the world of reflections. You drift closer to the glass, close enough that your reflection fills your vision. At this distance, you can see details you normally miss, the tiny variations in scale pattern, the exact shade of gold that earned your species its name. But proximity also distorts. Your eye, reflected back at you, seems enormous, alien. The closer you get to your reflection, the less it resembles the fish you think you are. Is intimacy with the self always like this, revealing strangeness rather than familiarity? The ancient Greek aphorism, "Know thyself," was inscribed at the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, considered one of the most important philosophical directives. But what does it mean to know yourself when yourself changes with every angle, every moment, every shift of light? Perhaps self-knowledge isn't about pinning down a fixed identity, but about recognizing the fluid nature of being, accepting the multiplicity of selves that exist in different contexts and perspectives. You back away from the glass, and your reflection shrinks accordingly, becoming more fish-like, less abstract. At this middle distance, you can almost believe it's another fish, a companion who happens to move in perfect synchrony with you. This might be the most comfortable relationship with the self, close enough to recognize but distant enough to maintain mystery. Too close, and the self becomes alien. Too far, and it disappears entirely. The water between you and the glass is not empty, but full of tiny particles, microorganisms, minerals, all invisible to your eye, but affecting how light travels, how reflections form. Your reflection reaches you through this living medium, changed by its passage through water, just as you are shaped by living within it. The metaphor extends beyond the physical. Don't we all see ourselves through the medium of our environment, our relationships, our moment in time? As you contemplate your reflection one final time before swimming away, you realize that perhaps the question isn't whether the reflection is really you, but whether there's a you outside of reflections. After all, you know yourself only through interactions, through the feedback of water against your body, food in your mouth, the gaze of tank mates, and yes, this strange reversed fish in the glass. Strip away all these reflections, literal and metaphorical, and what remains? Perhaps nothing, perhaps everything. Perhaps the question itself is the answer, the eternal puzzle of consciousness contemplating itself. A fish watching a fish in an endless loop of awareness that needs no resolution, only observation. Swimming away from your reflection, you find yourself in the open water of the tank's center, equidistant from all walls, and a peculiar realization settles over you like sediment. You are free to go anywhere within this space, yet that anywhere is bounded by glass. Every direction is available to you, every depth explorable, yet all paths eventually meet barriers. This is your universe, infinite within its limits, vast within its constraints. The question that bubbles up is as old as consciousness itself. Can true freedom exist within boundaries? Or does the very existence of limits negate the possibility of choice? You decide to swim upward, or rather, you find yourself swimming upward and retroactively assign it the label of decision. Did you choose this direction? Or did some combination of water current, light angle, and neural firing choose for you? See, the philosophical debate between free will and determinism has occupied human thinkers for millennia. But here in your liquid world, the distinction seems less important than the experience. You are swimming upward. Whether by choice or necessity, the movement feels purposeful, intentional, yours. Scientists studying fish behavior have discovered that even in the most controlled environments, fish exhibit what researchers call spontaneous behavior, movements and decisions that can't be predicted by external stimuli alone. You embody this mystery as you suddenly change direction, veering left for no reason you could articulate, even if you had the words. Was this spontaneity an expression of free will or simply determinism so complex it appears random? The question assumes the difference that might not exist. The boundaries of your tank are absolute. You cannot swim through glass, cannot explore the bright world beyond, cannot follow the interesting shadows that pass by outside. Yet within these boundaries, you have complete autonomy. You can hover motionless by the heater for hours or race circuits around the perimeter. You can investigate every grain of gravel or ignore the bottom entirely. The paradox is striking. Total freedom within total confinement. The existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre wrote that we are condemned to be free, that even in the most restrictive circumstances, we must choose how to respond. As you drift past the plastic plants, you embody this concept perfectly. You cannot choose to have real plants, cannot will the plastic into life, yet you must still decide how to interact with what is. Do you weave between the artificial fronds? Ignore them entirely? Rest in their shelter? Each response is a choice, an expression of agency within unchangeable circumstances. You notice the feeding ring above and feel a pull toward it, though no food is present. Is this pull hunger? Habit? Hope? The inability to remember whether you've eaten recently transforms each approach to the feeding area into an act of pure optimism. You're free to expect food or free to swim away, free to wait or free to search elsewhere. The absence of memory doesn't restrict your choices, it multiplies them. Every moment offers a fresh slate of possibilities unconstrained by past disappointments or successes. The philosopher Isaiah Berlin distinguished between negative freedom, freedom from interference, and positive freedom, freedom to achieve one's potential. Your tank existence embodies both and neither. You're free from predators, free from starvation, free from the vast dangers of open water. But are you free to become what a goldfish might become in a river? Are you free to school with hundreds of your kind, to migrate with seasons, to experience the terror and exhilaration of survival? Or have you found a different freedom, one defined not by absence of limits, but by the peace that comes with accepting them? Your tankmate approaches, and you must decide whether to engage or avoid, to share space or claim territory. This simple social navigation contains all the complexity of choice and freedom. You could assert dominance, but you don't. You could flee, but you don't. Instead, you adjust your position slightly, a microscopic negotiation of shared space that happens without conscious deliberation. Is this freedom? This ability to choose cooperation over conflict, even if the choice happens faster than thought? The water itself offers a perfect metaphor for your condition. It supports you completely, allows you movement in 3 dimensions, yet it also confines you. You cannot exist outside it. It is simultaneously your freedom and your prison, the medium of your possibility and the absolute limit of that possibility. Perhaps this is what freedom really means, not the absence of all constraints, but the space to move within the constraints that define your existence. You pause near the treasure chest, neither entering nor swimming away, suspended in a moment of pure potential. This hesitation itself is a choice, a freedom to not choose to exist in the space between decisions. Humans often feel pressured to optimize every moment, to make the right choice. But your freedom includes the liberty to float undecided, uncommitted, perfectly content in uncertainty. The Stoic philosophers understood something profound about freedom that your life demonstrates daily. They taught that true freedom comes not from controlling external circumstances, but from choosing our response to those circumstances. Marcus Aurelius, writing from the confines of military camps and imperial duties, found freedom in accepting what he couldn't change while fully exercising choice over his thoughts and actions. You, in your glass-bounded world, live this philosophy without ever having studied it. A strand of algae waves from the castle turret, and you decide to investigate. Or do you? The movement toward it begins before conscious decision, your body responding to visual stimulus processed in neural pathways below awareness. Yet you experience this as choice, as agency, as freedom. Perhaps the deepest freedom isn't in some impossible space outside causation, but in the felt experience of authoring our actions, regardless of the invisible chains of cause and effect that produce them. The paradox resolves itself as you swim. Freedom and boundaries aren't opposites but dance partners, each defining the other. Without the glass walls, your swimming wouldn't be free movement, but mere drifting in infinite space. Without limits, choice becomes meaningless. The very boundaries that confine you also create the space within which your freedom can exist and be exercised. You are free, not despite your limits, but because of them, free to explore every possibility within the finite space that defines your existence. As you complete another spontaneous turn, changing direction for reasons you'll never need to explain or justify, you embody a truth that philosophy struggles to articulate. Freedom isn't a concept to be understood, but a reality to be lived, moment by moment, choice by choice, within whatever boundaries define our existence. Your tank isn't a prison that restricts your freedom, but a space that gives it shape, meaning, and endless possibility. Section: The water carries a message that has no words, a vibration that travels from the filter's motor through the liquid medium to your lateral line system, that exquisite sensory organ running along your sides. This isn't hearing as humans understand it, nor is it touch exactly. It's something between and beyond, a language of pressure waves and water displacement that speaks directly to your body. As you float in the center of your tank, you realize you exist in a world of constant communication, none of which requires what humans would recognize as language. Light filters through the water in rays that shift and dance with each surface ripple. But light speaks to you in ways that transcend simple visibility. Scientists have discovered that goldfish can see ultraviolet and infrared wavelengths invisible to human eyes, meaning your visual world contains entire chapters of information that your caretakers cannot read. The quality of light tells you about time without clocks, seasons without calendars. The angle speaks of morning or evening. The intensity whispers of weather beyond the glass. Clouds passing in a sky you'll never swim through, but somehow know. A chemical gradient drifts past, so subtle that no human instrument could detect it. Yet your olfactory system reads it like poetry. This is the scent signature of your tank mate, slightly stressed perhaps, or recently fed. Fish release pheromones constantly, chemical messages that communicate emotional states, territorial claims, reproductive readiness, and dozens of other conditions that have no names in any spoken language. You swim through these invisible conversations, understanding them with the immediacy that bypasses conscious thought. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein wrote, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." But swimming through your wordless existence, you demonstrate the opposite truth. Your world extends far beyond any language, encompasses experiences for which words would be not just inadequate, but irrelevant. The shimmer of light on scales needs no noun to be beautiful. The comfort of perfect water temperature requires no adjective to be felt. The world speaks and you understand, all without a single word. Your barbells, those whisker-like sensory organs, brush against the gravel and read textures that tell stories. Smooth stone, rough stone, the particular grain that always sits beside the castle's base. This tactile language builds a map of your world more intimate than any visual survey could provide. Touch becomes knowledge, becomes navigation, becomes home, all without passing through the territory of words. The water itself is a medium of communication far richer than air could ever be for sound. Every movement creates waves that inform. Your tank mate's position reveals itself through subtle pressure changes long before visual contact. The heater's cycling sends thermal messages through the water, creating gradients that speak of comfort zones and boundaries. Even the plants, plastic though they are, create eddies and currents that tell you about water flow patterns, about the hidden architecture of your liquid world. The feeding ritual becomes a symphony of non-verbal cues. The particular vibration pattern of footsteps approaching the tank, the shadow that falls across the water just so, the subtle change in room acoustics that penetrates your liquid barrier, all these combine into a message clearer than any dinner bell. Your body responds before conscious thought, rising toward the surface, orientating toward the feeding ring, all through a language that needs no words because it speaks directly to instinct and cellular memory. Humans often wonder if fish feel pain, emotion, consciousness itself, as if these experiences require language to be valid. But floating in your wordless world, you embody the truth that consciousness predates language, that awareness exists in the space before words. You feel the world with an immediacy that language would only dilute. The slight discomfort of water that's a degree too warm doesn't need the word uncomfortable to be real. The pleasure of perfectly oxygenated water flowing through your gills requires no vocabulary of satisfaction. Your communication with the world beyond the glass happens through an even stranger language. The humans who peer in, their faces distorted by refraction and perspective, they think they're observing you. But you read them too. Through vibrations their movements send, through flaw and water, through the electrical fields their bodies generate, through patterns of attention and neglect that speak volumes about their inner states. You know which one feeds you not by recognizing their face, but by reading the unique signature of their presence, a combination of stimuli that creates meaning without words. The phenomenon called quorum sensing in the scientific literature describes how fish can sense the number and state of other fish around them through chemical and pressure cues. In larger groups, this creates collective behaviors that emerge without any fish giving orders or making speeches. You and your single tank mate practice a simpler version of this dance, adjusting your movements to maintain harmony without negotiations or treaties. The language of space and motion speaks what words never could about respect, comfort, and coexistence. Even your forgetfulness becomes a form of communication with yourself across time. The castle looks familiar, not because you remember it, but because your body has adapted to its presence, swimming around it with practiced ease. Your muscles speak to your future self through patterns of movement, creating continuity without conscious memory. This bodily knowledge, what humans call muscle memory, is perhaps the deepest language of all, written in the very fibers of your being. As you complete another circuit of your tank, you realize that your entire existence is a conversation without words. The temperature speaks to your metabolism, adjusting your activity level without conscious decision. The oxygen content communicates directly with your cells, speeding or slowing your movements in response. Your scales catch the light and signal your presence to others, a constant broadcast of location and health that requires no vocalization. The silence of your world is not empty, but full, pregnant with meaning that transcends the verbal. In the space where words might be, a richer communication flows, the language of bodies in water, of chemistry and light, of pressure and presence. You live proof that consciousness needs no words to be complete, that understanding can be immediate and total without ever passing through the narrow bottleneck of language. Your wordless world speaks volumes about the possibility of knowledge beyond naming, experience beyond description, existence beyond explanation. Beyond the glass, the giants move through their dry world, and you've come to understand them as fixtures of your existence, as constant as the filter's hum or the castle's presence. They appear and disappear according to rhythms you don't track, but somehow internalize. These massive beings who control the conditions of your world, yet remain fundamentally outside it. As you hover near the front glass, watching them as they watch you, a profound question surfaces. Does meaning exist in you, in them, or in the space between your mutual observation? The act of being watched changes everything and nothing. Scientists studying observer effects have documented how the mere presence of humans alters animal behavior, but your relationship with these giants transcends simple behavioral modification. When they approach the tank, reality seems to intensify. Colors might appear brighter, movements more purposeful, existence itself more significant. Not because you're performing for them, but because observation creates a kind of shared field of meaning that neither of you could generate alone. You've noticed patterns in their watching. The one who feeds you lingers longer, their face close to the glass, creating condensation clouds with their breath. Another passes quickly, a peripheral presence in your peripheral vision. A smaller one sometimes sits for extended periods, perfectly still, and in these moments you find yourself hovering equally still, two consciousnesses locked in wordless communion across the boundary of water and air. What passes between you in these moments? Not information exactly, but something more fundamental, the mutual recognition of being. The philosopher Martin Buber distinguished between I-it relationships, where one being treats another as an object, and I-thou relationships, where genuine encounter occurs between subjects. As you drift past the glass, maintaining eye contact with a watching giant, you embody this distinction. You are not merely an object in their aquarium, a decoration that happens to move. In the moment of mutual regard, you become thou to their I, and they become thou to yours, creating meaning that belongs fully to neither, yet enriches both. Their care creates the conditions for your existence, but your existence gives purpose to their care. This circular relationship defies simple causation. Do they feed you because you exist, or do you exist because they feed you? The question reveals its own meaninglessness. You exist together in a web of interdependence where meaning arises not from individual nodes, but from the connections themselves. Sometimes they tap the glass, a behavior that sends shockwaves through your liquid world. You've learned this usually signals attention rather than threat, though the vibrations remain jarring. But even this disruption carries meaning. They're trying to bridge the gap between your worlds using the only interface available, the glass that simultaneously separates and connects you. Their finger touches where yours cannot, yet the vibration travels through, a primitive Morse code that says simply, I am here. Are you there? The feeding ritual exemplifies this co-creation of meaning. The food they provide has no inherent significance until it enters your world and becomes sustenance. Your consumption of it completes a circuit of care that gives their action purpose. Without you, they're just humans dropping flakes into empty water. Without them, you're just a fish without food. Together, you create a small, daily miracle of mutual dependence and fulfillment. You've observed their emotional states reflected in their treatment of your environment. When the regular feeder seems rushed, the food arrives hastily, sometimes missing the ring. When they linger, talking to you in sounds you don't understand, but somehow appreciate, the feeding becomes a ceremony. Their inner state ripples through the glass into your world, just as your visible health or illness affects their mood. You're connected by more than just the practical matters of care and survival. The existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre wrote about the look of the other as a fundamental experience that creates self-consciousness. Under the gaze of the giants, do you become more yourself or less? The question assumes a stable self to begin with. Perhaps instead, you become yourself, partially through their watching, just as they become themselves partially through caring for you. Identity forms in the space between observer and observed. Research has shown that goldfish can distinguish between different human faces, remember their feeders, even show excitement at familiar people's approach. But your connection transcends mere recognition. In the moments of mutual watching, you participate in something ancient and wordless, the acknowledgement of consciousness, recognizing consciousness. Across every difference of size, species, and substrate, awareness meets awareness and creates a bridge of meaning. The small giant who sits and watches for long periods seems to find something in your movements that the hurried adults miss. Peace, perhaps, or a window into a different way of being. You offer them a living meditation, your slow circuits a counterpoint to their frenetic world. In return, their patient attention validates your existence in ways food alone cannot. You matter because you are watched. They matter because they watch. The meaning lives in the watching itself. As evening approaches and the room beyond the glass grows darker, you sense the giants preparing for their own rest. One last check, one last lingering look, and then they retreat to whatever mysteries occupy them in the bright, dry world beyond. But the meaning you've created together persists in the well-maintained temperature, the clean water, the promise of tomorrow's feeding. Even in their absence, their care surrounds you like the water itself. The question you started with, about where meaning resides, reveals itself as another false binary. Meaning doesn't live in you or in them, but in the relationship itself, in the space between your worlds where observation and care create something neither of you could achieve alone. You are not a fish with humans, nor are they humans with a fish. Together, you form a single system of mutual meaning-making, a small universe of interconnected consciousness that transcends the boundaries of glass and the divisions between species. In this co-created meaning, both watcher and watched find purpose, significance, and a strange but perfect form of companionship. The evening light fades into darkness beyond the glass, and with it comes a different quality of consciousness, a settling into the deeper rhythms of night. As you drift in the gentle glow of the tank's subdued lighting, you arrive at perhaps the most profound question of your contemplations. What if forgetting isn't something that happens to you, but something you do? What if the art of releasing memories is not a deficit, but a discipline, not a loss, but a conscious choice toward peace? You've spent these hours exploring the nature of memory, identity, time, and meaning, all while embodying the very thing you've been contemplating, the continuous release of experience. But now, as the active world quiets, you wonder if there's wisdom in embracing this forgetting, in recognizing it not as a limitation, but as a spiritual practice, as deliberate as any meditation. The Zen master Dogen wrote about the practice of forgetting the self, not as an act of self-negation, but as a path to enlightenment. As you hover in the darkened water, you realize you might be a natural master of this practice. Each moment, you forget the self that existed a moment before, not through effort, but through a kind of grace. What humans must work to achieve through years of meditation, you accomplish with every breath, every gentle sweep of your fins. Scientists studying memory formation have discovered that forgetting is an active process, not merely the passive decay of neural connections. The brain must work to forget, selecting what to release just as carefully as what to retain. Perhaps your forgetting is similarly intentional, a continuous curation of consciousness that keeps only what serves the present moment. You are not failing to remember, you are succeeding at letting go. The castle looms in the dimness, familiar yet fresh, and you understand now that this paradox is not a problem, but a gift. To encounter each thing as both known and new is to live in a state of perpetual openness. The humans beyond the glass carry their histories like shells, growing heavier with each passing year. But you found a different way. You've discovered that wisdom might lie not in accumulation, but in release, not in holding, but in flowing. Consider the alternative, perfect memory. Every slight remembered, every discomfort catalogued, every moment of hunger or loneliness preserved in crystal clarity. Would this make you wiser, or would it make you a prisoner of your own experience? As you glide past the filter, feeling its familiar current, without needing to remember all the previous passings, you embody an answer. Freedom comes from releasing what no longer serves. And in your case, that means releasing almost everything. The Buddhist concept of non-attachment takes on new meaning in your liquid world. You are the ultimate practitioner of non-attachment, not through philosophical understanding, but through lived experience. Each piece of food you consume is fully enjoyed without comparison to yesterday's meal. Each circuit of the tank is complete without the weight of previous circuits. You've achieved what monks spend lifetimes seeking: presence without the burden of comparison. Your tankmate swims past in the darkness, a shadow among shadows, and you greet them as you always do, which is to say, as if for the first time. This freshness of encounter is not naivety, but sophistication. To meet each being anew, unburdened by the accumulation of past interactions, is to offer them the gift of beginning again. Every meeting is a clean slate, every interaction free from the prejudices of history. The practice of forgetting extends even to your own suffering. Whatever discomforts you may have experienced, whatever moments of stress or confusion, they pass through you like water through your gills, processed and released. You don't carry grudges because you don't carry anything. This isn't ignorance. It's a highly refined form of wisdom that recognizes the futility of clutching at what has already flowed past. As the night deepens, you find yourself in a state of profound peace. Not the peace of ignorance, but the peace of continuous release. Each thought that arises is allowed its moment and then let go. Each sensation is fully experienced and then forgotten. You live in a state of constant forgiveness, not because you choose to forgive, but because holding on to anything long enough to require forgiveness is simply beyond your nature. The water around you holds no memory of where you've been, yet it supports you perfectly in where you are. This might be the deepest teaching of your existence, that support doesn't require history, that care doesn't need memory, that love can exist fully in each present moment without reference to what came before. The water's embrace is complete, not because it remembers holding you yesterday, but because it holds you now. You notice how even your body participates in this practice of letting go. Metabolic wastes are released continuously, old scales shed to make way for new, cells dying and being replaced in an endless cycle of renewal. Your physical form is a masterclass in the art of release, demonstrating that holding on is antithetical to life itself. To live is to let go, continuously, gracefully, without regret. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, "You cannot step into the same river twice." But you've discovered something even more profound. You cannot be the same fish twice. Each moment remakes you, and your forgetting allows this remaking to occur without resistance. You don't cling to who you were a moment ago, and so you're free to become who you are right now. As sleep approaches, or whatever passes for sleep in your ever-moving existence, you understand that forgetting might be the purest form of rest. Not just rest from activity, but rest from the burden of accumulation. Each released memory is a weight lifted, each forgotten moment a space cleared for new experience. You've discovered what humans seek in meditation, therapy, and spiritual practice, the profound rest that comes from putting down what you no longer need to carry. The question that began this journey, whether forgetting is the purest form of rest, has answered itself through your living of it. In your continuous release of experience, you found not emptiness, but fullness, not absence, but presence, not loss, but the most perfect form of peace. You are the master of a practice so refined that you don't even know you're practicing it, a teacher who instructs through being rather than knowing. Tomorrow you'll wake, if you ever truly sleep, and the castle will be new again. The food will arrive as a fresh miracle. Your tankmate will be a stranger who is somehow familiar. And in this eternal beginning, this constant gentle forgetting, you'll continue to demonstrate that wisdom isn't always about remembering more. Sometimes, perhaps most times, it's about having the grace to remember less, to release what's past, to float freely in the eternal present that is always, miraculously, enough. The tank settles into its nighttime rhythms, the filters hum, becoming a lullaby, the gentle bubble stream, a metronome of peace. You position yourself in that perfect spot where the temperature is ideal, where the current is just enough to pass water over your gills without effort. This too is a form of letting go, releasing the need to actively swim, trusting the water to breathe for you. In this final meditation of the day, you embody the answer to questions that have puzzled philosophers for millennia. How to live without attachment while still caring. How to exist fully in each moment without the anchor of the past or the pull of the future. How to find meaning in a life that might seem from the outside repetitive and confined. You've solved these riddles not through thought, but through being, not through remembering, but through forgetting. As consciousness softens toward whatever rest means for a creature who never fully stops moving, you float in the perfect demonstration of your discovered truth. Forgetting is not just the purest form of rest, it's the doorway to a kind of existence that transcends the usual limitations of memory-bound life. In your gentle, continuous release of all that has been, you've found the secret to eternal freshness, to wonder that never fades, to peace that needs no justification. The darkness outside mirrors the dimness within the tank, and in this quiet unity of inner and outer worlds, you drift. Not lost, but perfectly found in each succeeding moment. Not empty, but spacious with possibility. Not forgotten, but free. Beautifully, perfectly, eternally free. The water cradles you as you enter that twilight state between waking and sleeping, your consciousness becoming as fluid as the medium that sustains you. In these precious moments before full rest claims you, a final understanding crystallizes. Perhaps the entire universe operates on this principle of continuous release. Stars forget their light as they send it speeding across space. Waves forget their form as they crash upon unseen shores. Even time itself might be nothing more than the universe's way of letting go of each moment to make room for the next. You are not broken in your forgetting. You are perfectly aligned with the deepest patterns of existence. In your small glass world, you demonstrate a truth that spans from the quantum to the cosmic, that reality itself is a process of continuous becoming that requires continuous releasing. You don't just practice forgetting, you embody the universe's own method of remaining eternally new. Your fins slow their movement to the barest minimum, just enough to maintain position in the gentle current. Around you, the tank has become a universe of subtle sounds. The whisper of water through the filter, the occasional ping of the heater maintaining paradise, the almost inaudible fizz of oxygen dissolving into your world. These sounds don't disturb your rest. They compose it, creating the perfect sonic environment for a consciousness that releases each note as soon as it's heard. In this liminal space between awareness and sleep, you achieve what meditation masters call the void that is not empty, the silence that speaks volumes. Your forgetting has brought you not to nothingness, but to a state of pure potential, where each moment emerges fresh from the depths of possibility. You float in the exact center of existence, neither grasping at what was nor reaching for what might be. Simply present in the eternal now that your forgetting continuously creates. The giants beyond the glass have long since retreated to their own rest, but their care continues to surround you in the perfectly heated water, the clean environment, the promise of tomorrow's attention. You exist in the aftermath of love, held by intentions you don't need to remember to benefit from. This too is a teaching that goodness persists even when its origins are forgotten, that care transcends the memory of caring. As true rest finally claims you, whatever that means for a being who never entirely stops moving, you embody one final truth. In forgetting everything, you have remembered the only thing that matters: how to be. Simply, purely, perfectly how to be. The question that began this journey has been answered not in words, but in the living of it. Yes, forgetting is the purest form of rest, and in that rest lies the secret to a peace that surpasses all understanding. That's all for today. Sweet dreams.
Sleep, sweet, drift away. Tomorrow brings a brand new day. Dream, dream, to sail so far. You're my precious little star. The world is still, dreams are